Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on your lunch hour. I was just talking to Rachel, who's been really instrumental in making this whole virtual career fair process hopefully a success. Just talking about how when we did this workshop in the spring as a general career fair prep workshop, it was one of our highest attended, and I was perplexed at the time, but I realized it's just because I do a career fair every semester doesn't mean everyone goes to a career fair every semester. And unless you are on like the super extreme side of the extroversion, introversion scale, these events can be anxiety provoking or just plain exhausting. And some of you, especially if you aren't coming straight from undergrad, it's been a while since you've gone to a career fair. So this presentation, this workshop is going to go over kind of some general career fair best practices, some general virtual career fair best practices, and then we're going to drill down into some special considerations for the legislative internship fair. I should say legislative internship and career fair on November 12th, because it's a really unique event when it comes to the timing, the fact that this was the first time we're doing it virtual, and just like the population of employers that we're working with. So without further ado, let's see. I don't know how many of you have logged on to look at the virtual career fair in Handshake yet. You might see that there are maybe not as many as employers as you would have thought. I think we have 12 or 13 right now. I anticipate that we'll easily double that and more. But between now and then, there's a lot that you can do to prepare. And I know that you're all really busy and you don't need extra items for your to-do list, but most of these are pretty easy. And I'm hoping that the ones that require a little bit more work are fun. So number one is to update your profile. So make sure that you have your experience filled out, your education piece filled out, all of that stuff. Because employers do have the option of viewing your profile as soon as you sign up for a session. So if you were to go in there now and sign up for a one-on-one session with someone, they get an email alert and they can even go in now and look at your profile. So it's kind of like updating your LinkedIn profile before an interview. And speaking of, it's not a bad idea to update your LinkedIn profile right now either. Find out which employers are already signed up. So go ahead and check out who is registered and who has signed up for a schedule. And go ahead and sign up for some of the one-on-ones or group sessions. And just in case you haven't had a chance to do that, I will show you what that looks like. Pull up this. So this is the view from my student account, the career fair details. You can see everybody who's already signed up, whether they have selected a schedule or not. You can see what they're hiring for, the position titles, and you can even start to follow them, which means that you'll get an alert anytime they post a job or an internship, or if they register for an event or anything like that. If you want to see who already has available sessions, you can click there. You'll notice that I don't have any sessions yet, but once I do, I can pick a time. I can also see the representative with whom I will be speaking. So that will give me an opportunity to look them up as well. So I'll go ahead and confirm that time. And then it'll not only show up in my sessions, but in my schedule. So scheduling is going to be interesting because Handshake will allow you to pack yourself back to back to back to back with sessions. It doesn't build in a 1-minute break or 5-minute grace period. So it's really important that you keep that in mind when you start stacking your schedule, and also when the day of when you're managing your time. So let's go back to the next thing is to check back frequently. As you may know, some employers, some House and Senate offices are not going to know whether they need an intern until they know if they are reelected. Some campaigns who are new won't know if they need an intern if they're elected. So Rachel and Lauren Berryhill and I, over the next week and a half, we'll be calling some of those offices and prompting them, like, don't forget, I know you were just reelected or just elected, but sign up. So I do anticipate kind of a flurry of last minute activity, because not only do they have to register for the event, then they have to log back in and sign up for a schedule. And then we really have to make sure that you all know who's there so that you know to sign up for those sessions. And I really do encourage you to sign up for them as soon as you can, or as soon as you're able to know your schedule and as soon as they post it, because that'll allow you to prioritize as other employers sign up as well.
Prevent domestic violence wherever
Also, if you wait until the day of the event to sign up, it's possible that there won't be any sessions left for you to sign up for. So the sooner you can do that, the better. And then the nice thing about a virtual career fair is that you have very pinpointed targets for who you're researching. Sometimes at an in-person career fair, you think, I'm only going to talk to these 5 companies. These are who I'm interested in. But then you get there and you say, well, I didn't realize this person was going to be there. Or maybe there's a long line at one of those tables. And so you go and talk to maybe like a second tier organization that you're interested in, which means that you're either doing a ton of research for all of the companies, or you're talking to some employers that you're researched for and some that you haven't done as much research for. Luckily or unluckily, with the virtual career fair, you don't really have that freedom. You kind of know what your schedule is ahead of time if everything goes according to plan. And so you're able to research not only the offices and the organizations, but the representatives with whom you'll be speaking as well. Sometimes we don't always know who the representatives for the organizations will be at the actual event. And then finally, for any networking event, whether it is a career fair, an interview, even like a social networking event, I always recommend having your elevator speech, if not totally memorized, at least practiced a couple of times. If you're like most people, starting the conversation can be hard, anxiety provoking, awkward. So knowing what you're going to say right away, no matter who you're talking to, can be really helpful in like establishing confidence. And then also like knowing which of your attributes that you're going to highlight right away. So updating your handshake profile, making sure that everything is accurate, basically. So for those of you who are new to UT, your profiles should be accurate. You should be registered with the graduate school as a master's student with your proper major. However, if you went to UT Austin as an undergrad and had a handshake account, or if you went to another handshake institution for undergrad, there could be some crossed wires. So it's important that you go in and make sure that everything is up to date there. And I would do that as soon as possible, because I can't fix it for you. Texas Career Engagement fixes that on their end, and they're really quick, but they're not immediate turnaround really quick. So I would hate for things to get throttled, a couple of days before the event as you're trying to sign up for these last minute sessions, waiting for TCE to properly route your account. I also recommend updating like your desired job types, where you want to work, courses that you've taken, your previous education, previous work experiences. The nice thing about Handshake is if you upload an updated resume, it'll actually pull the text from the document, add it to your profile, and then you just have to approve that those things can be added to the profile. You'll also want to make sure that when you upload that resume that it's set to public or visible. And it's pretty easy. It'll prompt you to set that to public or visible. to do that. And again, this is because employers can look you up ahead of time if they're preparing for their day, and get to know you a little bit before. Also, when you sign up to talk to someone one-on-one, the video conferencing software has a very similar interface to Zoom. However, it has more limitations. You can't share your screen, and there's no way for you to send any sort of attachment of your resume like during the event. So it's important that you have your resume uploaded to your profile, because that's the only way you'll be able to share that document with them while you're talking to them or before you're talking to them. So research, this is the fun part, I think anyway. Professor Greenberg has done 2 Ledge 101 sessions at this point. Ideally, you have all watched the Ledge 101 or you're planning on it, that's posted to Canvas currently. That's the one that you have to watch and then take the quick quiz to cross off on your career fair checklist before you attend the event. And then I'm also working on, we recorded the live Q&A that Professor Greenberg did. That's currently being converted to a YouTube link, so I can upload that to Canvas as well. Both give an overview of some highlights coming up for the regular session in the spring, and some important policy and legislation areas. And the Q&A goes into a little bit more detail with that. Also goes into the nuts and bolts of the legislative course that is offered in the spring. And they both offer some insight into some professional norms and quirks from working in the Texas Ledge. One of the things that I learned in the Q&A session is that a real easy way to find a representative that you might want to work for is to search which committees they serve on. So you can search both in the Texas House and Texas Senate directories, and you can search their committees as well. I would also make sure that you have scoured Handshake, Texas Political Jobs, and the Texas Politics Project to see if they've already posted anything. Because it would be amazing if you had already applied for an internship or a position that they were hiring for, and then met the representative, and it's almost like, boom, there's your first interview. But it shows that you're proactive and that you are excited to work for them. And then I will almost never do a presentation where I don't talk about LinkedIn, because I am obsessed with LinkedIn. But as I mentioned, this gives you the opportunity to research the organization and whether alumni work with the organization or with the office, and the actual representative with whom you'll be speaking, and see what you might have in common with them. And I just did a quick screenshot of the LBJ School alumni page, because it is a really useful feature to be able to click on the alumni tab, search by name, search by location, search by organization, because one of the things that I have always found really pleasant about our career fairs is that we have a ton of alumni representation. So right off the bat, you already have something in common, and you already have something to kind of fall back on if you are in a session and you get really nervous, or you blank, or it's your last session of the day and you said the same thing over and over and you can't keep track of who you've talked to. If you make a little note that this is an alum, you can connect with them on that. Okay, so talking about preparing your elevator pitch, this is a little bit different than preparing an intro for, or preparing your answer to tell me about yourself, right? Because you want to be much more concise, impactful and concise. That's what policy students learn how to be with their memo writing, right? So 30 seconds is a good target. You can include classes that you're taking now, classes that you're planning on taking, a summary of your experience and skills. But if you're a little worried, maybe it's your first semester and your background, your professional background is kind of out of left field, or you don't feel like it has as much relevance to what your career goals are, just talking about your story and why you came to LBJ, why you're interested in the organization, that's usually just as compelling as a professional background that perfectly aligns with what they're looking for. And think about what makes you unique. Think about things that you've been praised for in the past, things that you've gotten high marks for, things that even maybe your friends turn to you for. I know when we think skills, we automatically think of the professional skills, you know, the data management or data science skills and computer programs and languages and even things like public speaking. But I think it's also important to think about what some of your soft skills or your transferable skills are and articulate those as well. And those are more challenging to articulate because you don't want to sound like you're just pumping yourself up full of buzzwords or you're saying the same thing as everybody else, right? Everybody thinks they're a team player. Everybody thinks they're a quick learner. And those things are important, but how do you put those in the context of what the work that you'll be doing with that organization? So what I want you to do right now is think about some things that you've been praised for in the past, but that you wouldn't necessarily put like in a resume skills section, but that you would want to think through articulating in either an interview or a career fair conversation. I'm going to play this quick video about how soft skills are important in a career in international development. Is the video showing or is my presentation showing? Video showing? Okay, good.
These are sort of skills that I think often people overlook, but are fundamentally important to actually how we deliver effectively as consultants and fundamental to the values that OPM has. That focus on getting people to work with government by listening and starting from the point of we don't actually know what the answer is. But what we do know is that if we listen hard enough and we take enough time to really think about the challenges with you and with our colleagues in other governments, whether it's in India or Pakistan or Sudan or South Sudan or Myanmar, Tanzania, we can actually come up with much more effective solutions. And sometimes you build it in to a program sort of more formally. So in our Action on Climate Today program, we've built in quite formal checkpoints where we do context assessments and analysis of what's going on in the different states within India that we're working in or in the different regional countries that the program works on. Those context assessments are really important in terms of actually getting people to sit down and think and to listen to their colleagues around them. And on top of that, what we've done is we've really looked at the way we recruit within that program. So instead of recruiting pure technical specialists, we've really looked to try to hire in people who have a broader sort of knowledge and are more entrepreneurial, but also very good at listening and engaging. And they have these sort of soft skills, the sort of higher emotional intelligence that we talk about a lot, that business leaders talk about, that politicians talk about, that civil services talk about, but actually that are very difficult necessarily to recruit for or to train into people. And we've seen some real success with that. I can think of one example where our team leader in Assam worked really hard for a number of months to build a relationship with the relevant civil servants, with the sort of chief secretary, where we could actually sort of take climate change and turn it into sort of something that the state wanted to put into its sort of public policy form and into the decision-making process. And he did it in many ways through just very basic soft skills, listening, understanding what the motivations of this chief secretary were, understanding what the challenges and political challenges were. And it's that understanding that comes from from listening to individuals and from when you are careful about how we think about the sort of sets of problems that really help us start to begin and develop the solutions that we need as consultants to deliver reform in different countries.
Oops. Okay, so what are some of the skills that he mentioned were soft skills that were important in the work that they did? Or what were some of the skills that they mentioned that you either thought Oh yeah, I'm actually really good at that. Or, oh yeah, that's what we're learning to do, or that's a skill that I am working on developing. Or if there weren't any soft skills that you saw reflected in your own personal experience, what are any soft skills that you have thought about wanting to articulate or share or highlight but have struggled with in the past without sounding, trite? Had to Google the spelling. Yeah, I usually have to use spell check for entrepreneurial as well. Yeah, being entrepreneurial. So how could we put that in context of your personal experience? Obviously, we saw a context for it there, but like think about a time in your life when you've been entrepreneurial. Or what does that mean to you?
Well, I guess that's kind of the hard part, is that I always think of it in the starting a business or something like that context, when really it should be more about being able to create your own opportunities, maybe even just within the job that you have.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if we change starting a business to like starting an initiative.
Yeah, I can see
That
that.
can kind of translate some of the same skills or activities. It's interesting because I've listened to a lot of public sector consulting info sessions, as I'm sure some of you have. And one of the soft skills that they articulated both in those sessions, but also in the Quant Night sessions, were they really wanted business acumen, which I thought was a really interesting way of putting it, but just sort of like, and it sounds like, an instinct or just an ability to read between the lines, which I think what Elena is getting at as well is, I know he mentioned listening like 4 or 5 times, right? But what did he really mean by listening? I think Elena's got an ability to make other people feel comfortable and understood. What else? What else did listening really mean? To me, it also translated to, again, sort of reading between the lines and understanding motivations, and finding new ways to connect with different individuals from different sectors, from different walks of life, which I think is something that we all strive to have, a skill to have to be able to communicate with all different kinds of people. But what does that mean for a policy career? What does that mean in a legislative office?
So I think like for policy work, we come in with a lot of our own ideologies and our deep, passionate views on certain topics. So just being able to not see the problem as black and white and being able to listen to other people's opinions and like seeing how we can work together. I think it's a lot easier said than done, but it's very important if we want to get anything done.
Yeah, 100%. Irving, can you think of a time in your past professional or academic experience when you have done that? I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah. Well, I think particularly so immigration is a big topic that I'm concerned with, but it's also one that brings a lot of controversy with people who have strong opinions about it. And so just even being able to have a conversation with people who do not think like me it's something that I have to be able to listen to what their concerns are, even though inside me I'm like, I have a strong view on this topic. So it's just it's really hard, where just having those conversations is something that I constantly have to practice and like mentally think about constantly in my in my head, just to be conscious of how my biases are coming out. Or yeah, it's just it's very difficult, but it's the only way I feel like to have any constructive conversation about the topic.
Yeah. And I would say that's a really important soft skill,
Mhm.
especially in a legislative office, especially if you're working on, like you said, a topic that can be kind of controversial, and maybe having to talk to constituents who have really strong opinions. But if you're a representative of that elected official, you have to find a way to listen to them and make them feel heard, even if you what they're saying might be making your skin crawl.
Exactly.
It's kind of a severe example, but yeah, I think that's a great context for that particular skill of listening, and the ability to make people feel comfortable and understood, while also recognizing your own values. Anything else that either was in that video, or something that you have noticed that you've been developing as you've been a graduate student, or something that you've been praised on in the past, that would maybe not be the first thing that you think of, but something that you'd want to express? Well, we can certainly move on, but I do want you all to think about skills that you're gaining. Some of the things that I hear are like the ability to communicate really complicated policy to a lay audience. Those kinds of things are skills that I know you all are developing, that you might not necessarily put in like a resume skills section, but are really important skills to put into context for not only your background, but how you can contribute to somebody else's work. Okay, so during the actual career fair, it's important to approach each session, at least each one-on-one session, with the idea that you're going to take the lead. We are all pretty in our habits of being in Zoom a lot and trying to find a balance of not getting zoomed out. So picking and choosing, when we'll turn our cameras off, when we will be active participants, or when we'll just kind of have something on in the background. And I think that, again, unless you're like a super extrovert and you get your energy from this kind of thing, it's really easy to click that button, switch on that video conferencing software, and just wait for the employer to introduce themselves. So I think if you go into it thinking, I'm going to take the lead and I'm going to introduce myself, it'll start the session off on a much more confident foot for you. Having questions prepared, again, being able to research everyone that you're going to talk to, will also make you feel like on a more confident footing. And then again, with our Zoom habits of, sometimes we're really active and engaged. Sometimes we're in a Zoom meeting with our camera on, but we're doing other work or answering emails. So I know confident posture and eye contact seem really obvious, but it's good to have reminders, since we've gotten really comfortable with being on camera all the time in all states of affairs. Make sure that you make a note to ask for contact information, because this is where you'll get the chance to either send updated documents, or maybe, when you're in the middle of a conversation and you get stumped, and then like later that night, you wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, oh my God, I should have said that. So this is the opportunity to follow up with that, ask for the next steps, and continue the conversation beyond the 10 minutes that you're allotted. And also remember, keep an eye on time, because the employer actually has the option of keeping you 10 minutes beyond their 10 minutes. And Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's one of the things I remember from the gazillion handshake meetings we've been to.
That's definitely correct.
Thank you. So you have to also kind of practice ending the conversation gracefully, right? You don't want to be late to your next meeting and then potentially being late for the rest of the day. So kind of practice with like 2 minutes to spare, saying, I really appreciate your time. I do have another session at 1 o'clock. But leaving a conversation gracefully is definitely another soft skill to develop. Let's talk clothing. I've gotten a ton of questions this semester about what to wear in a Zoom interview. And a lot of the times it kind of depends. Really, you need to know who you're interviewing with. We've all gotten a little bit more casual, even the most professional, the most buttoned up and conservative among us. And so depending on who you're interviewing with, business casual might be enough. However, if you're thinking about a more conservative office, like a House or a Senate office, I would really default to traditional business professional. We've also not all had an opportunity to keep up with regular haircuts or a regular grooming routine, which is okay. We don't have to all be perfectly coiffed. But again, just a reminder that it's important to treat this day a little bit different. Make sure that you are keeping an eye for what is distracting when it comes to your backgrounds and what you're wearing. So if you don't have a wall that is not distracting, maybe you have roommates or you're with your family or whatever it is, use the virtual backgrounds. Just make sure that you are coordinating that with what you're wearing. So you don't necessarily want to do, you know, a beautiful burnt orange background with like a chartreuse top. Because it'll be distracting, not because there's any particular rule against chartreuse at the Texas Ledge that I know of, but you don't want to be distracted and your employer doesn't want to be distracted either. So with that in mind, also avoid busy patterns, anything that's distracting. Also highly recommend wearing pants and shoes. That's a tip that I got from Dr. D, who said that in every single one of her TV interviews, she wears not just pants, but shoes, because it makes you sit differently and it makes you treat that session a little bit different than you do the rest of the day when you're probably barefoot. All right, so let's talk about what we do after, excuse me, career fair. Obviously, thank them for their time. Think about some things that came up during the conversation. Think about anything you might want to add that you didn't have the chance to talk about. Address action steps for the future. I look forward to hearing from you. Is there anything else I can provide from you? Still very interested. And then if there's anything that you can provide for them, maybe a link to an article or that's really all I can think of right now, but maybe something that came up where you're like, they say, I didn't know about that. More information on that. Just kind of a way to organically continue the conversation. And here is an example of a really straightforward email template. Again, these follow-ups, they don't have to be super long. In fact, being concise is the name of the game. But just leaving the conversation open and trying to be as impactful as you can and leaving a good impression. Does anybody have any questions about any of this, about career fair stuff, about the legislative fair in particular, about the handshake platform? Rachel, did you have anything to add? Did I miss anything about the peculiarities of the scheduling?
I guess it's just important to add, and you probably already mentioned this, but you can't overlap sessions. And if you do feel like cancelling a session, it's likely that there might not be any sessions left to pick from. So it's really important that you sort of organize yourself and get the sessions you want booked as soon as possible. But yeah, I think you covered pretty much everything.
Am I remembering correctly that the student can be up to 5 minutes late for a one-on-one session?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. But when you think about that, then you only have 5 minutes left in that subsequent session.
Exactly.
Or you're just late for the rest of the day, which gives me heart palpitations to think about.
Yeah, try your best to definitely make it to your sessions on time if possible.
Well, doesn't look like we have any questions. If you do have questions that come up, whether it's about really anything we talked about today, you can email both Rachel and me at lbjcareers@austin.utexas.edu. Really hope to see all of you at the Legislative and Government Affairs Fair. I'm pretty excited about the kind of variety of organizations that we have signed up as is, and I anticipate, like I said, many more. And I think it's just a really unique opportunity to bring in maybe even more organizations that would have attended if this was in person. So thank you all for being here today.
Thank y'all.